Coming to you live from deep within an icy radioactive wasteland. We are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy. Once more wading into battle against the zombie hordes with Rantzerker number 40. Much Laci, so science, very brain. Wow.
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 Yeah, no, all I've seen of this video so far is the clip that you provided for me. And I have the feeling that she's the scientist that's sitting there next to her is going to cite the work of a Israeli neuroscientist named Daphna Joel. And if I'm wrong, I won't eat my hat because I don't have a hat, but she'll be, I'm thinking she'll be referencing that woman's work, which is highly questionable, not necessarily in its methodology or instrument, right? But in the conclusions she draws from it. So,
but before we get stuck in,
what?
Before we get stuck in, no, it's okay. Before we get stuck in, last Rantzerker, I asked people listening if you aren't a patron, and not in a situation where you don't have the money to donate, that's understandable. We're not referring to you guys. But if you are financially able, why haven't you become a patron? And what would motivate you to become a patron? And I got many responses. So it was very encouraging. Lots of great suggestions. So I'm going to ask that again. If you aren't a patron, why aren't you a patron? And what would motivate you to be a patron? You can send the messages to topic@badgerpod.com. And if you are a patron, tell us what it was that got you to do that thing, which is very generous, and we thank you for. On the last show, someone in the comments said a breakdown of our expenses or what the money goes to would help to encourage them to become a patron. So I figure I would answer that question today. We did answer the question I think a month ago, but we can always revisit the question. In total, Honey Badger Radio right now takes in about $5,000. $2,600 goes to me, $600 goes to Brian, $350 goes to reoccurring expenses like Libsyn, extra internet access lines, etc. And our total monthly expenses, like reoccurring monthly expenses, are about $3,550. An additional $500 to $1,000 goes to one-time expenses like equipment upgrades or potentially upgrading our website, which we're still sort of saving for. And the remainder goes to building up our buffer. What I mean by that is I'm sort of a very fiscally conservative person. So I like to work with a significant expenses buffer. Right now, our expenses buffer is at about 2 to 4 months of operating expenses. So we have enough in savings to cover 2 to 4 months of additional operating expenses. My preference is to work with about 8 to 12 months buffer of operating expenses, so that if anything happened, we can continue operation for 8 to 12 months and fix whatever went disastrously wrong. I assume it would be something like Patron deciding that they don't like us anymore and telling us to fuck off with great vigor and vehemence. But in terms of the amount that goes to me, I work about 60 to 70 hours a week. If you want to see a breakdown of my hours and activities, I keep track of every hour and what I'm doing during those hours that I bill to Honey Badger Radio. And if you're interested in that, you can also send me an email. It'll probably take me a day or two to break down my day timer into something that I can send to you, but I will do it if you have interest. But just to give you an overview of what I do, I break down I have general organizational tasks that I do every day. I break them down into mailbag, patron, and Skype. My first task is to organize the mail, sort it into folders, forward, reply, or forward it to Skype chats. I also do mailbag show compilations and forward them to the involved parties. In this case, today's show, I would be forwarding it to Hannah, Brian, and Warren Farrell. And then I inform the people who send in the mail that they're going to have their mail read out on show. Then I move to Patron, where I give each new patron a personalized greeting. So every greeting that you get on Patron, I have written. It's not copy and pasted. In this, I register new shows, I answer questions, and if it's the end of the month, I work on creating a thank you post. And my third task is to deal with getting information to and from the various Skype groups and reviewing the blog team's editorial progress, updating them with links and stories that aren't claimed, and following up with the ones that are in progress that they're working on. And while I'm doing this, I'm also doing show work like scheduling Rantzerkers, cleaning up the YouTube channel by updating playlists, reminding Karen about ads, getting her links. And when I'm done the general tasks, I start working on writing up what I'm saying now, shills, general information, stuff that needs to be conveyed during the show. In addition to that, right now I'm working on some projects, a mini documentary fundraiser for the upcoming season, channel trailer, and a very secret project that I'm not going to reveal all of the details of. And if I have a bit of downtime, what I'll do is I will research sales, management, and organization, just to give myself a break from making decisions constantly. And in addition to this, I am pretty much moving pieces of information to and from people constantly during the day. And the general tasks alone take me about 3 to 4 hours. And then there's also the specific project tasks that I do after the general tasks. And then I'll do some research, some necessary research, foundational research to the projects that I'm working on. So that's basically what I do in a day. A usual day for me is actually about 12 hours long. And that's okay. It's I sort of once I was inching towards 80, I was like, no, I'm going to take Saturdays off, because I really need a day off after all of that. I actually had I took a half day in like early February to roll coins, and I know it sounds really pathetic, but just sitting there doing nothing but rolling coins was like the highlight of the month for me, because I don't have to make any decisions. But anyway, that's what I do, and that's where the money goes. And in terms of the actual show quality, what you get by having me work full-time on organization is a series of teams creating different types of content. You got the blog team, we have the unspecified team that's working on a secret mission, and then we also have the various radio show teams. And I basically work on organizing all of that. So, but if and when we have the money, I would like to bring on a part to full-time person to work on just the sound, and then we can start improving the sound properly. But until then, you're sort of stuck with me, and my forte is organization. So that's what you get. Anyway, let's get on with the show.
All right. Okay, so screen share, entire screen. Yeah, no, I just want to reiterate as well that, yeah, no, she ain't lying. The amount of like actual, like I would kill myself if I was presented with, like you need to do what Alison does, or, I don't know, live in a cardboard box. Yeah, no, I would maybe kill myself, but I would rather live in a cardboard box than do what Alison does. It's not easy to herd cats, and that seems to be a lot of what her day is herding cats. Me being probably the worst of the lot of all of those cats. So
you're more of a cougar. Oh shit, sorry.
I am a cougar. When I earned the title when I began a long-term relationship with a man who is closer in age to my oldest 2 children than to me. So there you go. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed of it. So there you go. I earned it. All right. Look at these 2 smug bitches. Everybody can see that?
Let's get stuck in.
Let's fucking get started with this shit show. Oh my God. She's going to mention Daphne Joel's research, maybe not by name, but she's going to refer to it. And I'm just going to be like ready to bang my head against a wall.
There are a lot of people with opinions about gender, but
isn't there?
Today, we science, and I hear you do some sciencing now and then, Vanessa.
You could say that.
Hey everyone, Laci here with Vanessa Hill of PBS's Braincraft.
Okay. I'm just going to say, because Laci Green is coming to, I think, Grant McEwen University College in my city, in my wonderful city of Edmonton, Alberta, in March. And I was thinking of getting a VIP pass so that I could have an after presentation meet and greet with her, complete with a downloadable high definition picture of me and Laci together. And it wouldn't have cost that much, but I couldn't do it. I just, no. I might attend, but not as a VIP who gets to shake her hand and like go anywhere near her, because like she scares me. I'm sorry, she does. She's so perky. It's frightening.
Yeah, she is pretty, she's the bounciest totalitarian ever.
She's like so fucking bouncy. Like I say, it's just almost frightening. But
You're delaying.
I don't want to watch this. Okay, let's go.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining me. So the old saying goes, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And there's a lot of debate about this, right? Is there such a thing as a female brain or a male brain?
Well, it's difficult to categorize a brain as either male or female.
Yes, it is. There's like almost no brains that are entirely male and entirely 100%, absolutely 100% female. Okay, moving on.
So let's say you cut a brain open and you look at two parts. You wouldn't be able to say if it was male or female or even from a transgender or gender neutral person. There's a small difference in one of our areas of the brain, the
corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum. It connects your two hemispheres, and it's slightly bigger.
A small difference that's slightly bigger. Yeah, no, that slightly bigger. Yeah, no, that equates to like hundreds of thousands of extra connections. So like define slight.
In women, but we can't really infer anything on how your brain functions from that.
So if there's
Really? You can't infer anything about how the brain functions from what brain structures you have.
Oh, by the way, I think I figured out another secret rule by YouTube. 20 seconds, and then more than one person has to speak. Otherwise, it thinks it's just a standard response video. There are secret algorithms in YouTube that govern all of this shit. It's really, it's sort of sinister in a way.
It is, yeah.
So let's just be, I will have to speak. I'll have to say, you know what? I think I just tuned right out to what the hell this was. Anyway, just let's do the next segment.
Okay.
no such thing as a female or a male brain, then what's going on with differences that we...
That is retarded. That is a retarded thing to say. There's no such thing as a female or male brain, right? That's like saying, because there is a spectrum, right? And we are insisting on a 0 or a 1, right? That you can't say that any given value is closer to 1 or closer to 0, right? This is what got me about Daphne Joel's research, right? Because she found, rightly so, that there are very few, like under 5%, in some cases like under 1%, when it comes to behavior, right? And when it comes to brain structures. She found that in the case of brain structures, there was like less than 5%. I was thinking it's 1 point something percent of the brains she looked at had only male structures, male typical structures, or only female typical structures, right? And when it came to behavior, less than 1% of people only engaged in stereotypical male behaviors or only engaged in stereotypical female behaviors. Now, what this means is, and then she concluded from that there's no such thing as a masculine, that there's really no difference between male behavior and female behavior, right? So what this means is that if Laci Green knows how to change the oil in her car, okay, or change a tire, right? She is personality-wise, right, behaviorally-wise, no different from Gunny Sergeant Highway from Heartbreak Ridge, who is the most fucking masculine fucking soldier you could ever, played by Clint Eastwood, one of his most brutally masculine roles, right? Stereotypically, right? But he read Cosmo magazine because he really wanted to find out if he and his ex were mutually nurturing, right? And so there would be no difference between his behavior and Laci Green's behavior if she'd ever changed a tire in her life, right? Like, no difference whatsoever. They're both exactly the same. He's no more male than she is, and she's no more female than he is in their behaviors. Like, this is what the conclusion was from Daphne Joel, and this is what they're trying to say, essentially, about, oh, there is no such thing as a male brain or a female brain, right? Yeah, no, if 99.9% of the brain is typically male, and that 0.1%, is more commonly found in female brains, right? They would say, well, that's an unsexed brain, right? And therefore, there's no such thing as a male brain or a female. Like, the level of, like, literally, these are the people who say, there is no such thing as a strict gender binary, but they're insisting on the fact that there is no strict gender binary in most cases to mean that there is no such thing as masculinity and femininity, no such thing as a male typical brains and female typical brains, no such thing as personality differences in between males and females, right? There is no spectrum, right? And because, like, they're essentially saying there's no spectrum, we can't consider it a spectrum, it's all or nothing, and because so few cases are all cases, they're all nothing cases.
Let's just even look at testosterone. Testosterone and estrogen both have very different effects on behavior. And this is consistent. This is what's so funny, is I actually got into an argument with someone. It might have been in a psychology class. I think it was a feminist. No, actually, it was on Reddit at some point. And I told her, you go to biologists and you say there are no sex differences between animals, they will laugh their asses off at you. You go to an anthropology class and you say that there is no sex differences between male and female apes, they will laugh their asses off at you. Yes, there is. There are exceptions. But if anything, human culture mediates the difference between the genders. It mediates the extreme, like, if you look at chimps, the behaviors that male and female chimps engage in and their activities and how they conduct they are extremely segregated. Like, even more than Sharia law segregated. Chimps are extremely segregated. They're not, I don't know about bonobos, but for chimps, they live almost completely separate existences, which is consistent with a lot of other mammals, where males and females do not interact unless they're mating. And that's it. Completely separate, segregated existences, and their behaviors are distinctly different.
Yep.
Their territories are distinctly different. The way they approach patrolling their territories is distinctly different.
The way they approach forming coalitions is, in particular, extremely different.
Now, if you look at other mammals, like pack mammals that might be moving more towards our highly social, you do see a lot more of an overlap. Because males and females are in almost constant social, they're together constantly. They're in a society where they interact constantly. You see that with wolves. You see that with other pair bonding mammals and breeding colonies and groups where you have male and female pairs, and they're raising their offspring, and they're next to other male and female pairs, very similar to the way humans structure their societies. They have there's a lot more overlap in the male in those species, but there are still distinctions. They still act differently.
Yeah.
And it's culture, human culture, if anything, reduces the level of sexual dimorphism. It doesn't increase it. Yeah. And I think, and what was really funny to me is, even I don't actually, like, this is more of this Laci shit. This particular video she did, this is definitely in Karen's wheelhouse. It's not as much in my wheelhouse, because I prefer to look at what people are advancing in terms of expected gender norms. And to be frank, feminism's incredibly starkly delineated gender norms that it advances and expects women and men fucking terrifying. It's like they want to regress us back to like being solitary animals that just never interact. They want to destroy an aspect of our sociality. And why I say that is that they have incredibly, like, women under feminism are encouraged to view themselves constantly only in terms of how other people act on them. And men in feminism are encouraged to view themselves as these super agents who have, that they move slightly, they sneeze, and women are blown away like broken, wilted leaves in the wind, the powerful wind of the great majesty of male potency. And
yeah,
this is like,
don't you remember the farts are sexist?
Yeah, like everything. Feminists encourage women to reduce everything down to some sort of purposeful intention on the part of men and men's actions. And then they reduce women. Feminists reduce women to being solely acted upon and men to solely actors. This is like insane levels of sexual segregation, of psychological sexual segregation. This is like psychological Sharia law. Probably even worse.
And honestly, maybe there is something in the female brain that leads women to see themselves that way. I don't think that you get the same level of tendency toward doing that with masculinized women. Like I don't see that same tendency that I see with people who are, she's presenting as entirely feminine. And so is she, entirely feminine. These are two entirely, and thank you, Laci, for getting a new couch because it's much more attractive than your old one. But like literally, these are two women who they are embracing, right? Not just certain standards of sort of being concerned with their appearance, right? But like, because I am not a feminine woman. My boyfriend gives me a hard time all the time about, why do you need to check your hair before you go out, right? Like I have that sort of, I don't want to go out looking like a freaking derfwad, right? But I don't want to have this long hair, right? I don't like, these are two stereotypical girly girls talking about how there are no differences whatsoever between male brains and female brains.
Well, I'll say that, I have stereotypical long hair, but I want to show you where I'm actually broadcasting from and why we had to start a little bit late because our compressor turned on because we use air to run a lot of our tools. So this is our bandsaw, which I turned into a temporary sort of place where I can put for when we do our broadcasts. And actually the bandsaw was my idea because I found it was one of the most useful tools in the shop when I was doing my work. So yeah, that's how feminine I am. I'm broadcasting from a workshop, mine and my husband's workshop. So
well, and look at it too, right? Like you have long hair, right? And for a while there, I had long hair too. But it was, I had long hair because number one, I couldn't afford to keep up with haircuts, every 6 weeks. It was too expensive. And number two, it's easier to pull long hair back into a ponytail than it is to deal with hair that you can't cut often enough when it's short, right? You have to spend more time dealing with, at least with my hair, right? You're not putting a whole lot of effort into your hair, Alison, right? Like you didn't sit with a curling iron to get these sort of ringlets, right? You didn't apply lots of makeup, including like layers of foundation to your face before you came on camera, right? You're not wearing a skirt. You didn't pay $150 for a pair of fashionable boots. right? That are only, they're not functional. They're just fashionable. You can't ride a horse in them. You can't freaking go hiking in them. No, they're just for looks, right? And they probably have no insulation. They're not even good for winter, right? I mean, like, both of these women are embracing the most impractical aspects of feminine sort of social sexual signaling, right? That you know, like, neither of them are expecting to ever, like, to have to break a nail, right? To have to do anything that would get dirt on them, that would damage these $150 boots that they're only wearing for show. And so, unlike cowboy boots or work boots, the moment they get a scuff, right, they're no good anymore, right? These women are absolutely 100% stereotypical women.
Yeah.
A man in the same situation on an MTV program, if she was interviewing a man, he'd probably be wearing a t-shirt and whatever jeans he picked up off of the bedroom floor when he got up in the morning. He might have put some styling paste in his hair, right, after he got out of the shower. And that's it. And slapped pit stick on his armpits. That's all he would have done to prepare. Right?
So what we're dealing with, and the reason why we bring this up, is they're obviously very much inclined towards a feminine presentation. And what that tends to imply to me is when she starts to say, well, no, real differences in, and incidentally, a feminine gender presentation ties. When I took my anthropology course in university, what they said about, for example, female chimps is that they compete over resources, which means that they are trying to get the most amount of available resources to raise or to feed themselves and their young. That's what women compete, or female chimps compete over. And if you relate that to a highly self-aware species, the fine fabrics, the very, very carefully coiffed hair and the makeup and all of these are affectations of wealth. So what we're seeing here is basically two chimps saying, I'm wealthy. I'm wealthier than you. You're wealthy. I'm wealthy. Look at this. Look at this. Look at the wealth that I can wear. I have lots of resources. And that's what women compete over. They compete over perceptions of having access to lots of resources. That's the essence of female competition. The essence of female competition in the wild, and they are engaging in it right now. They are engaging in behavior that is entirely consistent with, for example, chimps in the wild, over feeding resources.
Yeah, but the difference is that essentially what you end up with, like, because men compete, you know, on that level too, right? You know, who has the nicer car, right, and who has the truck with dualies. Or whatever, right? They do that too, but those resources are not to feed their young. They are to say, I have resources to a woman like this, right? And a woman like this, mate with me because I have excess resources that you can exploit, right? So,
or alternatively, they demonstrate displays of physical prowess to attract a mate. But so these two individual women are competing on a very feminine level over displays that they have valued resources. And it's different for men because usually the resources that men display relate to their abilities, their physical abilities. None of the resources that these two women display relate to their physical abilities.
I can almost guarantee you too that she didn't. This is just a jean jacket, but she didn't get this jean jacket at Walmart.
Well. But anyway, the reason why we bring this up is, again, because they are saying there is no sexism in brains while they are displaying exactly the things that they say that don't exist.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, and another reason why I bring that up is because of this. They are talking about this not because I think that they actually believe the science, which she doesn't seem to support them, but because it goes against their ideological perception of reality. They want to be able to blame everything on men. They want to be able to blame the fact that there are more male test pilots and more male surgeons and more men in STEM and more men blah, 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 and more men as politicians. They want to be able to just slam men with that guilt and say, you're doing that to women. You're making women victims. That's why women aren't in
arbitrarily and for no reason.
Yeah, if there we recognize there are sexual differences, then we can give men a break on the blame train. And they want to run that blame train right over men, as many men as they possibly can. So the only reason, well, I think ultimately these two women oppose a scientific explanation of differing gender roles and why men might be attracted more to risk occupations like CEOs, like politicians, like test pilot. They want to do that simply because it defies their desire to keep men under the boot heel of guilt.
Yeah.
And that's it. These women want to retain their age-old gender traditional role of judging men. And they want to do it on a wide scale. Laci wants to keep you under her, you know what, that's actually a fetish. So what is, Laci wants to make men squirm. She wants to put herself above men morally. That's what she wants to do. She wants to make sure men know that she is their moral superior. And this idea that maybe men and women are drawn to different things because of differences in their brain chemistry or differences in how their hormones change their expression of behavior, that would get men off the hook. That wouldn't let Laci Green stick it to you guys. That would be one less thing that would make her feel morally superior to you and make you feel like worms squirming.
And you can sort of see this in feminism's sort of vilification of testosterone as being the aggression hormone. It's the hormone that's responsible for violence. Now, everything that's come down the pike research-wise over the last 10, 15 years has indicated that increased levels of testosterone occur after violence, after there has been a an aggressive confrontation. The victor, the man who comes out on top, he has a boost in his testosterone as a result of that, and the loser, has a decrease in his testosterone as a result of that, Testosterone, it doesn't cause aggression other than in the same way oxygen causes shoplifting. Like, you need some in your system in order to be aggressive, but you can't tell how aggressive any person is going to be based on their general testosterone levels, And so essentially, this whole idea that they want to sit in moral judgment of men, their focus on testosterone is entirely this whole idea of testosterone poisoning, the testosterone causing aggression, testosterone causing men to be violent, when this is just simply not the case when it comes to the more recent research, They don't want to look at testosterone's effects on fair bargaining practices, testosterone's effects on the reduction of the telling of self-serving lies, You increase testosterone and men are more fair when they're bargaining. This is a pro-social behavior. You increase testosterone levels, you reduce them, the incidence of them telling self-serving lies. You increase testosterone and you get less risk aversion, So men are maybe more willing to take a gamble or take a risk, And violence is risky, And that might be the causal pathway that links testosterone to men's greater willingness to engage in violence on their own behalf, than women's, But if, I say this all the time, if I kidnap somebody, if I roughed them up, put duct tape on their wrists, stuffed them in the fucking tool shed and locked them up for 3 days, I would be guilty of multiple violent felonies, But if I just call the police and lie and say that he raped me, then the police will come and rough him up and they'll cuff his hands and they'll lock him in a cell for 3 days or longer, right? And all I've done was say some shit that wasn't true. I haven't engaged in any violence. I haven't engaged in any aggression, even though my act of lying to the police was an act of aggression, right? So it's like these feminists, they will only look at testosterone in terms of all of the things that they can pin on it that are bad, right?
Yeah.
They will not look at they absolutely will not. I guarantee you, they're not going to get into the role of estradiol, right? They're not going to get into the role of the emerging research that indicates that it's not actually your blood testosterone levels that predicts aggression. It's and is a precursor to aggression. It's actually how much of that testosterone is converted to an estrogen in your brain, right? And it's the estrogen in your brain that's really the pathway that facilitates aggression.
Okay, I wanted to point something out, and we should probably get moving, but just quickly point something out. Last night I talked about how women seem to be free, like, and this isn't necessarily, this is just a thing, it's not really a moral thing, but women are usually in, for example, tribal circumstances, in charge of doing the torture. And I just realized when you were talking, Karen, that makes perfect sense with testosterone freeing up men's feeling like getting men to engage in more risky behavior, because they will go out and do the battle that might result in injury to themselves. They'll do the violence that may actually has with it a cost in terms of potential risk to one's own health. Yeah. But women are perfectly happy doing the violence that has no cost. Yeah. Because they're doing it to someone who's captured and incapacitated. So I don't think that women are less violent. They're just less inclined to risky violence. When they have a victim who's completely helpless and incapacitated and you can't do anything to them, then they go to town on them. And
which is probably why they're more likely to hit their children.
Yeah, but let's finish this.
All right.
We see in people's behavior.
So the differences we see in people's behavior are mostly a result of our environment and not our biology.
That is such a fucking load of shit.
It is actually, and it is for precisely the reason I said before. And you say this to any biologist about sexual differences in behavior between animals, and they would laugh their asses off. You say this about primates, and they would laugh their asses off at you. Now, like I said, there's more overlap because we're some sort of weird pair bonding, multiple mate breeding colony thing going on. But
we have a very, very unique form of socio-sexual organization.
Yeah, so I mean, there's more overlap in that case because men do a high degree of childcare relative to other species, but for the most part, there is no way you would get away. I don't even know how she can say this. She's just baldly asserting this in the face of all the fucking evidence to the contrary.
She's referring to Daphne Joel's research, and she is going by the conclusions that Daphne Joel reached, through her research. And the research, the actual research itself, right? The actual analysis of the brain scans that she looked at, right? The actual answers to the survey, right? Stereotypical male behavior, playing video games, being interested in cars, right? And female behavior, like wanting to wear makeup and things like that, right? The conclusions that she, like the actual research itself, right? It does indicate that there are very few people who are all one way or all the other, all completely 100% stereotypically male and have, like that dude bro who fucking is like the most freaking dude bro you've ever met. But, he kind of likes baking, right? Every once in a while, he just he likes to bake a pan of brownies or some cookies or something, right? Or you have the woman who is totally girly girl, totally, obsessed with makeup, totally blah, 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 right? But she might play video games. She might enjoy playing Team Fortress 2 once in a while, right? And, what this freaking researcher is saying, this or scientist apparently is saying, is that there is no difference between that girly girl and that dude bro, no difference whatsoever, and that any differences that may exist culture. Well, you know, as cultures have become more free, more affluent, people having more freedom to choose to do what they want to do rather than what they have to do, right? What do we see? We see a greater divide between the choices of men and women. We see a greater divide, you know, between what they choose to do for a living. Like this is for them to say in the face of a culture that does nothing but try to encourage women to go into STEM, right? That the decreasing number of women in STEM between 1950, right? The decreasing proportion, I guess, between 1950 and now, right? That somehow that's to do with our outside culture, these cultural, like, you know.
Well, I would argue,
I'm astounded.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I would argue that it is due to culture, the decrease since the 50s. I would argue that it's due to the increase, and it's funny because this segues exactly into what they're asserting. They are asserting that the primary force or gender roles is culture. Well, if that's, let me just allow that's true for the sake of argument, that that's the primary form of gender roles. Then what the hell is feminism presenting for women and men? And that gets right back to what I was talking about earlier. Feminism as a cultural force enforces these gender roles in which women are solely defined by how they are acted upon by other people, and men are defined by how they act upon by women. So how men take actions on women and how women receive those actions. This is the feminist gender role. This is the cultural shit that they've been promoting since the 60s. And not surprisingly, to my mind, I think that could be implicated for the reduction of women in so-called egalitarian societies, in STEM fields. Now, I don't know for sure. It could also be that men don't really want to take the jobs either, and there would be fewer of them if they could actually get a woman to pay for them to go sit at home and take care of children and look sexy and just provide sex to their provider. I don't know. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that it could be cultural forces, but the cultural forces that are most likely implicated in the reduction of women in STEM is feminism itself. The cultural force to try to compel women to either exaggerate a natural propensity or simply create a completely unnatural belief in one's complete lack of any kind of ability to take action and just be receiving the actions of men. If that makes any goddamn sense, I don't know, because I might have gone off the reservation. Anyway, we'll have to wait for Google Plus. Yeah, there we go.
I think you're right. I think you didn't go off the reservation. I think that there are of course cultural forces at play, right? But the more affluent, I mean, like, you look at toys in the 1950s, right? Much more gender neutral than they are now. And just the toys, the sheer proportion of toys that would be considered gender neutral in the 1950s compared to now, right? That is, in my opinion, that's a matter of affluence. It's like, honestly, when I was a kid, like, I learned how to darn a sock when I was 5, because when you got a hole in your sock, you didn't just buy a new pair of socks, right? You repaired your socks, right? And I knew how to embroider a little bit older than that, right? And the reason why I wanted to learn how to embroider was because I wanted to make funny little pictures and messages and phrases on the patches that went on my clothes, because I was wearing hand-me-down clothes, not just hand-me-downs from my 2 sisters, but sometimes from, other families that would then go through my 2 sisters, right, before they got to me. And so they needed patching. And, like, you repaired the clothes that you had. You didn't just freaking, oh, the jeans got a hole in them, buy another pair of jeans, right? And it's the same thing with toys, right? Toys had to be, if you had a family, right, you were buying toys with the idea that all of your children, whether they were sons or daughters, were going to be playing with the majority of the toys in the house, right? And the market it reflected that, right? The market reflected that because people didn't have a whole lot of disposable income. People had different priorities in that day and age, right? Even though it was a period of unprecedented wealth and unprecedented economic growth, right? People did not have the kind of disposable income that they feel like they do now anyway. They may not have it, but they feel like they have it, right? So you weren't going to spend the money to buy a luxury item like a toy, right? That was only going to be good for your son and your daughter would have no interest in. It just wasn't something that parents tended to do, right? The moment that there was a market there, right, for highly gendered toys, because people had money that they were willing to spend on toys that would only be played with by their daughters or only played with by their sons, right? The market gave them those toys. And now we have the majority of our toys being highly marketed according to gender because boys are more willing to want to play with fucking super soakers and Nerf guns than girls are. And girls are more interested in playing with Polly Pockets than boys are, right?
And I just want to say one thing.
My daughter, I just want to say one more thing. My daughter she was the most fucking brutal child. Absolutely fucking brutal to raise her. She was more trouble than all three of the boys I raised prior to that, right? Absolutely a fucking nightmare, maniac, pick up a brown hairy spider. Yeah, I want to be friends with you, right? Handle snakes, get in the mud, like walk up to strange dogs and just like try and wrestle them, jump from any height, all of those things. She was like a total boy girl, right? But when she finally was able to, and she was nonverbal for a long time, when she was finally able at age 4 to actually ask for something for Christmas, right? To actually verbalize what she wanted was Polly Pockets. It wasn't the cars and the Legos and all of those things that and Bionicles that she happily played with. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't the Nintendo game. It was I want Polly Pockets, right? Do you think any of my boys asked for Polly Pockets?
I doubt it. But the last thing I wanted to say before we banana is I think that they would get a better idea of what I want to see is these two working alongside a African woman in a quarry, just breaking and lifting and hauling rocks all day.
Yeah.
And because those societies are the ones who are doing the non-sex segregation best. So maybe you should take a leaf from those pages. Not a nice little safari with UN aid money and staying in a fucking hotel, and then doing a safari to the ghettos and throwing out, I don't know what the hell these women do when they go on aid relief work, but whatever. Not that shit. Go into a quarry and break rocks and haul them out for 12 hours a day. Do that.
Just for 12 hours one day.
Yeah. And then come back
day.
And complain about your society and its gender roles. Okay, let's banana. Let's banana the sucker.
Okay.
Which then goes on to produce stereotypes, right? Or in other words, widely held ideas about how someone will behave because of their gender.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Stereotypes exist for a reason. Stereotypes are shortcuts.
Yeah, but
right?
Also
this red berry made me sick, right? If we were not the kind of creatures who were stereotyping creatures, right? If we did not have the ability to notice patterns and categories, right? We'd just keep eating the fucking red berries that made us sick. We'd just keep eating them because, the next one might be okay, right? The whole reason we're fucking here, you stupid cunts. here in this society and not like dead in a pool of primordial ooze, right? Somewhere millions of years ago, is because we have the capability of spotting patterns, forming categories of things in our minds based on stereotypes.
Yeah. The other thing is do male privilege, patriarchy, are these stereotypes? Like a widely held idea about how someone will behave because of their gender. Rape culture, patriarchy, male privilege, aren't those actually more neatly fitted into your bullshit, Laci, than the fact that we see that young girls seem to like pink Polly Pockets?
Well, they don't like, well, they like pink Polly Pockets because Polly Pockets have a lot of pink, right? But if all Polly Pockets were blue, right, and all of the Tonka trucks out in the world were pink, girls would want blue Polly Pockets and boys would want pink fucking Tonka trucks, right? The colors don't matter, right? The colors have actually been reversed. The color pink became heavily associated with women during the second wave of feminism, because feminism wanted to take the color red, right? Pink used to be a boy's color because it was a category of red, right? But it was not it was not seen as quite as potent as red, right? So it was a child's red. It was a red for a child, right? Potent masculine color, the color of blood, the color of alarm, the color of red lights and code red and warning systems and all of those things, right? It was a masculine color, and they took it and they like toned it down a little bit for like little toddler boys, because, you know, it's a little much, right? The whole red on a like 3-year-old boy, right? Used to be a boy's color. Then when feminism came along, they wanted to take the idea of red, right? The strength of red, the all of the potency of that color, right? The fact that it's one of the primal colors, right? If you have a culture, a society of people where their language will always have at least 2 words for color. One will be represent light and one will represent dark, so black and white, right? And if they have 3 words for color, that third one will always be red, always, every single time, human universal across the board, right? If there are 3 words for color, one will be for black, one will be for white or dark and light, and the third one will be for red. They wanted the primacy of that color for themselves, but they didn't want all of the masculine associations with it, so they made it pink, right? And they had the pink fist, the pink female symbol, right, with the fist in it, pink. And that's when pink started really getting associated with women and girls.
All right, banana.
Banana.
Exactly, and reminding people of their gender, of these gender stereotypes, creates something called a stereotype threat, where people tend to perform in ways that just reinforces this stereotype. For example,
Okay, sorry, Karen.
Yeah.
I have to mute you. But what I was going to say, stereotype threat. So, first of all, I'm remarkably, now we've paused on this several times. It seems so bizarre how each time they seem like they're sharing a private joke. Not this in particular this time. Although, what kind of fucking expression is that? Anyway, but what I wanted to say about stereotype threat is, so we stereotype. We establish these ideas that men will behave in certain ways, like patriarchy, male privilege, rape culture, and then we create threats out of them. Okay, so now we've just basically Laci and this individual over here has essentially described the entirety of feminism, the entirety of the corpus of feminism.
No, that's not what they're talking about when they talk about stereotype threat. They're talking about if you sit a group of boys and girls down with a math test, right, and you prime them with an idea, right, with a message before they sit down and take the test, and In one case, you prime them with the message that boys and girls are equally good at math, right? They will perform generally equally. If you prime them with the idea that boys are generally better at math, the girls will do worse than they would have otherwise, right, on the test, right? Because they've internalized the message, right? I can agree that this probably has something to do with impacting people's behavior and how they perform, right? That there are ideas of what is appropriate and what is not for your gender, and that you will absolutely conform to those subconsciously without even knowing it if you're primed immediately before performing a task.
Okay,
right?
okay, Karen, wait. Here's a question. If these if priming children with these kinds of stereotype threats is problematic, as they would say, then what about going into schools and teaching boys to take responsibility for everything bad in the world, namely
Agreed.
harm to women? What does that fucking do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it also, you know, you look at it and you see the sort of the standard, you know, girl behavior being the gold standard in the classroom, and that really does give the boys a message that school is, like, not only are they seeing, like, up until, you know, maybe grade 8, almost entirely female staff and teachers, right? The girls are held up as sort of the exemplary model of what's proper behavior, what's appropriate behavior in the classroom, right? And this would give them the idea that school is not for me. School is not for boys. School is, you know, boys just don't do well in school, right? This school's not for them. This school isn't a boy thing, right? So I think that I don't think we can write off this whole idea of stereotype threat. We do know that boys in the UK have responded on surveys to the effect that they feel like their teachers have it in for them, and that they're right, because their teachers grade them down compared to the grades that would be given by gender blinded evaluators, right? So we already know that boys have this feeling that their teachers don't approve of them, that the teachers don't approve of their behavior, their natures, that their teachers penalize them, grade them down compared to girls, right? All of these things, right? And we see the results in dropout rates and incidences of acting out that lead to suspension and expulsion and things like that, right? So essentially, we really do have a problem with stereotype threat, at least in terms of when people's personalities are forming, which is generally, you know, those primary school years, when they get when they are acquiring a positive self-concept that can last, that can help them weather other challenges to their self-identity, other things, you know, that can help them get through coming out of the closet as a gay guy in, you know, when they're 14, or you know, telling their parents that they don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, they actually just really want to, you know, do this other thing, you know, or dealing with other challenges that would negatively impact their self-esteem. What prepares them to be able to do that, right, and weather it and not have massive, like, psychological fallout, right, is that self-concept that they're supposed to be building in primary school at the very moment that we're subjecting boys to a level of stereotype threat that these women have no fucking clue what it would be like to live under that.
No, they don't. And it's sort of fucked up. Like, and again, I think it's a manifestation of the feminist gender role. Women cry and wail and gnash their teeth over the smallest pea. And that's their role. That's their role in life. This woman's role in life is simply to be a substrate upon which we write the positives or negatives of men's actions, and that's fucking it. Well, no, thank you. And why do you have a bra on your wall, Laci? Why is there a bra in some sort of circular, like a fucking altar.
You know what's retarded is like this show is called Braless, right?
No,
She's
I know
always-
she's always wearing a bra.
Fucking bra.
Yeah, but look
Right?
at the bra on the wall. I don't care about her clothes and what she's not wearing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's like she has big tits, so I guess everything has to be like bra this, bra that.
Yeah, but why would you create a fucking altar to a bra? Like, why would you do that? A bra is simply a utility. When you are doing something strenuous exercise, you wear a bra.
Yeah, it's
So
like
that
steel toe boots.
Yeah, it's like steel-toed boots, and you are putting it on a fucking pedestal, as if it means something. And you know what's really funny? Is that just alludes to the general social meaning that breasts have. Everybody loves breasts, because that's where our first meals came from.
Apparently.
Yeah, look at let's banana this fucker.
Okay.
For example, many studies have found that males and females perform similarly in math tests, but when female students are asked to report their gender at the top of a math test before they start, their performance is worse.
So basically, just like the math stuff, we're seeing how people's gender-based attitudes are creating real-world differences.
Okay,
in
Bob,
girls-
banana. All right. Okay, we don't want to go too long, because we run afoul of Google's secretive, shadowy algorithm laws. All right.
Yeah.
But again, once again, we're paused, and they look like they're just sharing an inside joke amongst themselves.
I know. It's like
This is awfully funny. This information, which is supposed to be very scientific, is awfully amusing to them.
Yeah, I know. Like they're supposed to be being perky and chipper, and I don't fucking know.
Also, they're
wait. They may be trying to be perky and chipper, but this comes across more as smug.
Yeah, but
Eh.
all
I don't
right.
know. All right, let's well, what the fuck did they say anyway? I completely forgot. This is really hard to focus on.
Well, they brought up the math tests after I did, so
Yeah, let's just keep going.
but also their interests and their behaviors too, right?
There's something
okay. So it doesn't just affect their performance, but also their interests and behaviors. I'm just gonna say that there's plenty of evidence outside of our species, right? In closely related primates that show not just different interests in toys, right? Between male and female juveniles who are left alone without any adults involved, right? To choose what they're interested in. Studies that have shown differences in interests in newborns, studies that have shown difference in interests in essentially how they assign gender to intersex children, right? Is they put them in a room with girl toys, boy toys, and gender neutral toys, and they monitor and they just let this kid who's just like 8 months old and can crawl and can essentially choose what it wants to play with, and they just observe the kid. And that's how they decide, okay, well, your kid's probably, going to be a girl. Your kid's probably going to be a boy. So, this is not, it's not new stuff, right? And the whole idea that it can, that culture can vastly, like that it can totally change interests, right? It can make you more interested in something than you otherwise would have been, or less interested in something that you are interested in. But it can't completely flip your interests, right? Culture it does not have the ability. Culture doesn't. I grew up with a mechanic for a father. I held the flashlight for him and learned to swear while he was tinkering with his car, right? Tinkering with the family car. I helped him butter floor tiles. I did some of those things I picked up and I enjoyed, but I really have no interest in drawing schematics for a new way to design a fucking machine or something like that he was able to do. He drew fucking massive technical drawings to modify equipment that his company was using to improve the efficiency of the equipment that they already had, right? Yeah, no interest in that. No interest in hearing how, I'm interested in like using computers, not interested in hearing my boyfriend talk about his latest fucking coding project for work. Like, please just fucking somebody shoot me in the head when he starts talking about it. Not interested. And he can't make me interested. And he swears up and down I would be capable of it. And I'm like, yeah, I probably would be. But I would want to kill myself if that was what I had to do all day. Right? And
Okay.
he loves it. He loves it.
Okay. Now, having said that, oops, looks like I'm gonna have to. All right, just a second. Okay, gotcha. All right, so now that as it may, the biological differences. If these feminists, the assertion that it really is cultural differences that are what matter. Why should we get behind going away from this more folk-related gender differences? So what I mean by that is it's decided on a grassroots level. People have decided to buy these toys for their children, or they've decided to develop these kinds of gender roles for their children on a grassroots level, like applied bottom up rather than top down. Why should we change that to the feminist gender roles? Because if we're saying that gender roles are entirely cultural, feminists are also asserting a set of gender roles. And where's the argument that we should get rid of the gender roles that we've sort of established just by the individual choices of children and parents everywhere and replace them with these chicks' gender roles? Where's the argument? Why are your gender roles better, Laci? How are they more useful? Or alternatively, how do they create a better environment or a better society? Establish that, allowing for the idea that cultural gender roles exist. Why are the feminist gender roles better? And they are gender roles, Laci, because for every boy that you say male privilege, rape culture, violence against women, you have a girl that you say victim of violence against women, victim of patriarchy, victim of rape culture. So for every boy you say your actions are bad, you are telling to a girl, you don't take action, you're just a victim. Now tell me, Laci, if I agree with your presumption that gender roles are entirely cultural, please explain to me why your cultural gender roles as a feminist are superior to the folk cultural gender roles that we have established grassroots. Explain.
Yeah, she would. Oh, she won't. They won't. They'll be like, because equality. Yeah, no, whatever. I don't even fucking care anymore about equality. I literally like equality under the law. That's what I care about. Equality under the law. I don't care. Like, why isn't Laci cutting all her hair off? Stop wearing makeup, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. She's talking about the cultural gender roles that define males and females, and yet she seems to be perfectly happy. Why don't you heal thyself, Laci? Cut your fucking hair off, rip off the bra, wear a shirt and some shitty jeans, come in covered in grease, and do your show. I'm actually challenging the gender roles. Yo, people, Laci says Laci while she actually is doing that.
Yeah.
Fuck. I just sort of degenerated there. So let's just banana this fucker. Fucking.
Okay.
Right? There's something called implicit bias that comes into play in a big way. Now, implicit bias is our bias that we have in our judgment and behavior towards people that we don't even realize we have.
Right, which is
Well, okay, can I introduce a concept of implicit bias? Psychologically, we take people and we put them into two categories: actor and patient. An actor, we recognize their actions, their power, their potency, their ability to affect change. Patients, we recognize their inner life, that they are acted upon, their emotions, their reactions to other people's actions. These are the two categories. Their lived experience. These are the two categories. What feminism is doing is creating not just the permeable wall that used to exist 50 years ago between these two categories of male and female. They are creating the goddamn What is that fucking thing in Berlin? The wall in Berlin, the wall of,
The Berlin Wall.
yeah. Jesus Christ, it's the worst one yet. I'm sorry. Berlin, they are creating a fucking wall. So before feminism came, we had the category actor and we had the category acted upon. And generally, it was a permeable membrane, but generally men were in the category acted upon culturally, and women were in category actor, and culturally women were the category acted upon. We had a tendency to put them in there, but it was still permeable. And there was still some stuff that put women in the category of actor and men in the category acted upon. We could still sort of see that they both occupy both roles a little bit more than not. Now feminism comes in, and it takes the category acted upon and the category actor, and it forces men and women into separate categories of psychological existence. And it puts a wall between the two, a wall that is built out of brick and mortar and freaking razor wire, and
has broken glass embedded in the top. Yeah.
And then they put in guard towers with snipers to make sure that nobody ever breaches that fucking wall. And they put men in the category of actor and women in the category of acted upon, and they take that permeable barrier that used to exist up until like the 1960s, and they turn it into an impenetrable fucking wall. And anybody tries to fucking breach that wall, they shoot them the fuck down. And that is what feminism has done. They have created something that was just maybe a slight inclination, and they have codified it into law. A slight inclination to see men as actors, a slight inclination to see women as acted upon. But overall, we still recognized how they were whole beings, because we needed women to be able to act in order to protect and provide for their families. They have taken that, and they have turned it into the most rigorous, fundamentalist gender roles of all fucking human time. And then they have the audacity to turn around and say, oh, it's just cultural that you give your daughter pink bricks and your son blue bricks. That's just cultural. All of your individual choices as parents and children, that's the real toxicity, not what we're fucking doing. You know what this is starting to feel like? It's starting to feel like they are just creating a smoke screen for their totalitarian gender bullshit. And I'm done.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to that.
It's really sneaky. Even people who are super aware of it, we're not immune. We're not immune to these influences.
In the 80s,
like the influences of like getting your hair highlighted and, curled, and the influences of like, wanting to wear fashion choices that enhance your femininity and your body shape. And, because you do have an hourglass figure, even if you're a little chunky there, Laci. You do have you do have the proper waist to hip ratio, and you do have like some glorious, you got a really nice rack there, right? And you want to accentuate that. You want to wear makeup that highlights all of the neotenous features of your highly neotenous face, right? Oh yeah. You're highly aware of all of this, but you still do it anyway, don't you? Don't you, Laci? Fuck. God
damn it. All right, let's see what they have to say.
Orchestras introduced blind auditions, where candidates would audition behind a screen to conceal their gender. Following this, the number of female musicians in the top 5 orchestras in the United States jumped by 20%.
Oh my God.
I know. You know why that might be, actually? It might not be because of their talent, right? Might not be because of their talent. It might be because... It might actually be because they're women. And the orchestra doesn't want to try and find some temporary violinist to fill in for their violinist when she gets pregnant and goes on maternity leave. It's awfully hard to find violinists who are capable of,
Is this citation accurate, though?
It is. It is. They introduced, they gender blinded the auditions, and they found that that female musicians ended up in more slots, jumped by 20%. Still not, it's not like now they're 50-50, or it's even entirely representative of the number of women and number of men who audition. But, you know, honestly, there are other things besides talent that people are going to be looking at. And those things, yes, they may be stereotypes. Okay, so you got a young woman. She's 27 years old. She's just finished at Juilliard, right? She's auditioning. And you're looking at her and you're thinking, okay, so we're looking at maternity leave, not once, but maybe twice. And during the time that she's off, that we have to hold her job open so that she can return to it, we're going to have to fill her seat with a temporary person who is willing to work on a temporary basis, who's willing to come and play violin for us for 6 months and then just happily go, right? You know, like, I'm sorry, but these are considerations that employers have.
Well, the other thing is, this was solved in 1980. Let it go. Let's move on. If this was a problem in 1980, then that's no longer a problem. So let's move on from this.
Well, I mean, it shows that there are implicit biases, right?
Yeah. Well, but like you said, there is baggage that comes with being female, and it usually relates to being put in the category of acted upon, which in the 1980s, which is interesting because they're not mentioning the STEM fields. Like in the 1980s, there probably was twice as many women in STEM field as there are now. They don't mention that part. Now,
I don't know if there are twice as many women. There was twice the proportion of women.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Twice is the proportion of women. Yeah, mathematic correction. But if this is the case, a lot of the stereotypes around women are related to being in the category of acted upon at that time. So the assumption was that when they get married, a man would provide for them. And those assumptions are buttressed by social expectations and legal realities in which, and in the 80s, they were still laboring under some of them. Like, for example, during the Depression, only men who were taking care of women could get a job. The rest, bachelor men without female relatives could go die in a fucking ditch, Laci. These are the realities that men face, is that if they are not taking care of a woman, they can go die in a ditch. They're useless, and society will simply put them and say, you can starve to death. You can starve to death. That's your appropriate role, young man, is if you are not providing for a woman, you can starve to death. So yeah, for a great deal of time, they would preferentially give jobs to men who were taking care of women. Not just men who were expected to take care of women. That's who they preferred to give jobs to. But you don't talk about the men who weren't taking care of women, who starved to death because of the social expectation that men who are taking care of women get jobs first. This is never entered into the consideration of seeing women not giving jobs to women. Okay, well, if you have a social expectation that men take care of women, and you preferentially give jobs to men who are taking care of women, and if you don't actually preferentially give jobs to men who are taking care of women, and then give jobs just to women who are just taking care of themselves, the assumption is that they have a man taking care of them at some point, and this is just extra spending money, whereas men are actually taking care of families.
Yeah.
That was just the social role. And yeah, sure, we should have broken that down. We should have changed that and allowed maybe men to be taken care of by women, etc. But to look back at that and then say that this is an oppression of women, you're fucking nuts. Laci, I want you to imagine yourself as a young man who's just been told by his mother and his father that he has to go out and get a job because they can't feed him anymore. And he's in the Death Bowl depression. And he's looking at dozens and dozens of men for every single job. And the only men who are being selected for those jobs are ones who are taking care of their female family members. So guess what's going to happen to him? He's going to go from town to town to town. till he just ends up dying somewhere. Imagine that life, Laci. And then come back and tell me that women were oppressed.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. All right, let's move on.
It's not just a gender thing either. This spans across various social groups as well.
Yeah, it does. And there's actually studies that have looked into tipping in restaurants. And in a lot of them, they found that both black and white customers in restaurants tip white servers more than black.
Okay, wait. Okay. I noticed that they go away from gender for this one. I guess it's the feminist wormhole that now these two white women are actually now appropriating the injustice or the bias against black men.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Men are more likely to get jobs in very, very high-end restaurants than women, right? Women are in any restaurant up to the highest end restaurants, right? Women are more likely to be front of house staff, and they get better tips than men in those positions.
Well,
right?
that's why we went to. That's why you see the sleight of hand here? That's why we went to minorities, because if there's a situation where you can cast these two women in the role of victim, thus moral arbitrator, because when you are acted upon, you actually gain the power of morally judging those who are perceived to act upon you. So by being a victim of men, these women gain the moral power over men. Moral power over men. That's what they're doing. When they can cast white women as victims, as they did with the Blind Orchestra, or women period as victims, they do that. And when they can't do that, they do minorities. But we all know it's women and minorities, or rather just women.
But what I wanted to say, right, was in those very, very high-end restaurants, and I have been to a few, there's a very different style of service, right? And the staff are essentially, if you look at this guy, he's just like part of the wallpaper. If you look at this guy, he's just part of the furniture, right? He's like these young men, right? The way they're dressed, white shirt, tie, right? Nothing really outstanding about, like nicely kempt hair or, whatever, right? They don't stand out in any way. They are not expected to be extremely personable with the customers, right? They're not supposed to be chatty. They're supposed to be unobtrusive. When you're in a high-end restaurant, the server is supposed to be never noticeable, but always there, right? So in a high-end restaurant, you don't pour your own wine. They don't just put the wine in a bucket in the middle of the table and you pour your own wine. No, it goes in a bucket outside of your reach, and the server keeps an eye on your glass, and when your glass gets low, they come around and they take the wine out of the ice bucket and they offer to refill your glasses, and then they go off and make themselves unobtrusive again. That is what high-end service looks like. And when I was working at the Tony Roma's, where I worked at, the boss, who happens to be a woman, and she was always trying to try and class up the place a little bit, right? Try and enforce rules of sort of classier behavior among the service staff. Don't get too familiar. You can joke around with customers a little bit, but dress and present yourself physically in a professional way. And she would have to post probably once a month. She would have to post a notice reminding the servers of the dress code, right? That if you do not want to go back to uniforms, if you do not want to go back to the Tony Roma's soccer shirts, essentially, right? That you will have to purchase, right? And will be the only thing you are allowed to wear if you show up for a shift and you don't have this shirt, right? And you just have a regular black t-shirt, Yeah, no, you're not going to be allowed out onto the floor. If you are, there will be no Lululemons. There will be no skirts that are where the hemline is higher than your fingers, right? When you put your arms at your sides. There will be no boots. Boots are not appropriate serving attire when you're wearing a skirt. If you can fit them under your pant legs, sure. If you can hide the fact that you're wearing boots, but you're not going to wear fucking boots, especially not thigh-high boots. No lace backs on your tops. No obscene levels of cleavage, right? And, all of these rules, because literally the female servers, every time they would sort of, she'd give them an inch, right? They would take a mile, they would tart themselves up because they can get more tips from the male customers, right? If they look like hookers, right? But the manager is trying to make it's a family restaurant. It's not it's not a bar, right? So essentially, she would have to constantly pull these women back, right? Now, let's fast forward to me being treated to a night out by a fan from South Africa who came. He hooked up with me while he was traveling through North America. Very, very wealthy man, staying at one of the most expensive hotels in Edmonton. Met me in the lounge of that hotel. I was wearing jeans. There was no way we could go to the restaurant at the hotel with me wearing jeans. But we had some drinks in the lounge of this hotel. And the woman who served us was wearing this uniform, right? A tie, like a white shirt and a necktie. And her hair was pulled back into a ponytail, unadorned, and she wasn't wearing any makeup. She was part of the furniture. She was not an ornament. She was not the center of attention. She was just part of the furniture. That's why she got hired at a high-end restaurant.
Because she could follow the rules and make the chef and the food the star, essentially. That's what I'm hearing.
No, not make the chef and the food the star. Just not be essentially she could be as unobtrusive as a footstool. Right? And like this was in the lounge. There was really not any food being served, right? But as a server in a high-end restaurant, you are supposed to be like furniture, right? You are not supposed to be there like looking like you're wanting to hook up with somebody.
I gotcha. But let's another example they could have used. And they used this example because they couldn't make women out to be victims in this scenario, I imagine. But they could have used a little bit more intelligent an example than tips. How about sentencing, where women, because of the implicit attitudes towards women, they get 60% of the sentencing that men get?
No. They get men get 63% longer sentences. I don't know what that works out to when you express it in the other direction.
Okay, so men get 63% longer sentences because of the implicit biases against. But no, we have to go back to the 80s with an issue that's already been solved. Beat that dead horse a little deader. Find an issue that actually faces minority men. And pretend that, I don't know, somehow appropriate it with the feminist wormhole. And then what's the next thing that they're going to do? Let's banana this sucker.
Okay.
When people rated that they were happier with the black servers' work.
This actually reminds me of the elections too. I don't know if you're following it, but there was recently this big outcry again that Hillary is always screaming and shouting.
Oh.
Wait a second. Shouting. Wait, no, Karen, don't start. Don't actually get drawn into this shit. We have to now analyze it on a meta level. How did we go from minority men getting paid less to, oh, this reminds me of Hillary as a presidential candidate, as a white, did you see the feminist wormhole here, folks? Black servers get paid less, but they get better performance reviews. People like their performance better, but they get paid less. Feminist wormhole. Somehow that relates. Somehow they've just slammed these two concepts together. Black servers being paid less despite being rated higher in their performance, and the white, wealthy, well-connected woman, something is going on with her. Did you see that? Did you see what they just did? Please tell me you see it. And before we respond to the bullshit spaghetti string that they're throwing out about Hillary, please tell me you saw that feminist wormhole just happen. Somehow, something to do with black working class men getting less than white working class men, but being rated better in terms of their performance. Somehow that has something to do with a wealthy, white, well-connected politician who's female. Something. Did you see this?
Because reasons.
There's absolutely no fucking connection between these two concepts. Laci has just slammed them together in your mind in the hopes that she'll get the two neurons, one related to minorities who are being discriminated against, and one related to Hillary, slam the fuck together.
I really hate this whole shouting thing with Hillary because she essentially accused Bernie Sanders of sexism because apparently he referred to her as shouting about gun control, and when a woman shouts, it's just not okay, right? She treated it as a sexist jab at her, right? That he said, here's literally what he said: the issues with gun control are not going to be solved by both sides shouting at each other. Right? He said it frequently. He said it repeatedly. He said it months and months and months and months, right? Over and over and over again in speeches. And then because she was against him in a debate and he said, we're not going to solve the issue of gun violence by having both sides shout at each other, right? Then she's like, he's sexist. He accused me of shouting.
People hate it when I shout too, but fuck you. All right, I don't think it's sexist. I just think that they probably hate something. I don't know, whatever.
I don't fucking know, but
we're close to the end. Let's do it.
Okay.
When she's just talking, and to me, that says that gender stereotypes
What the fuck did that have to do with it? What the fuck did those two concepts have to do with each other, Laci? Nothing. Black servers being paid less, even though they're rated higher, has not the fuck to do with Hillary shouting. Nothing. Like, how? This has got to be the stupidest feminist wormhole yet. Like, this is not even an attempt at pulling the logic together, Laci. This is the laziest shit I have seen yet. As feminist wormholes go, this is more like a fucking sock tunnel. All right? Okay. There is absolutely zero fucking connection. And go back a bit, because she says, oh, this is gender roles. So they deaconed because they couldn't find a way to make women the victim. So they went to minorities, and then they said that the minorities are victimized in the same way that Hillary was. And then what did they say?
And to me, that says that gender stereotypes have a huge effect on how we perceive what's going on with our eyes.
Yeah, to me that seems really unfair, because when you think about it, all of the candidates perform in the same.
You know what really is interesting? The fact that we will tolerate we will tolerate Hillary appropriating victimhood where we would not with a man.
You know what's interesting? Okay, here's the stereotype about Cruz. He's an asshole, right? He's a smarmy, arrogant asshole. That's how Ted Cruz is portrayed by media, right? I don't know enough about Christie. Carson is the brain surgeon who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old. He's a freaking he's a religious nut. Bernie, you want to see criticisms and parodies of him shouting? Yeah, no, just go online. Just watch Steven Crowder's parodies of Bernie shouting, right? Okay, and look at this picture of Trump, right? What's that saying? What does that say about him? Right?
Okay, can I point something out here, Karen?
What?
Because this is the most fascinating feminist wormhole yet. We start, because they couldn't find another way that implicit biases hurt women, that they had to go back, they had to pull something from the 80s and beat a dead horse deader, and then they had to deke into something that affects minority men. Okay? They had to deke into something that affects minority men, relate it to Hillary Clinton through some sort of anecdotal quasi-voodoo that, oh, she performs just as well. Just like minorities, working class men perform just as well but get paid less than minority working class women. Hillary performs just as well as these guys, but gets less credit. But listen, but here's the thing. There's a minority guy in there now. So did you see what they did? They used his problems, conceivably, because he's probably wealthy, so he probably doesn't have them. They used the minority guy's problems to make Hillary out to be a victim, even though she's a wealthy, well-connected politician. And then they turned around and took away the minorities guy's status as a victim by putting him in this group of men.
Yeah.
They have essentially just extracted any claim that minorities have to victimhood. They have extracted it, and they've extracted the benefit from it, and they're now enjoying the golden showers of that shit.
This guy's also minority. I forget where he's from, but he's not he's like Hispanic, so.
And they've done it with the laziest logic ever. The laziest, like, this is the worst feminist wormhole ever to this date. Black servers somehow relate to Hillary, who is somehow being treated worse than minorities and white men in the same position because she's a wealthy white woman. Okay, did you see this? So
yeah.
Not only did they appropriate the victimhood, after they've appropriated it, they essentially cast minority men as not being victims. So they've just stripped black men and Hispanic men and everything of their claim to any kind of discrimination for themselves. They just stripped them, and then they put them back after their use is complete. They put them back into the category of privileged. Unfucking believable, and this is what they're getting away with.
Yeah,
nobody questions this shit. Well, except us.
Like it boils down to the only reason you can hate Hillary is because she's a woman. And there are so many other reasons to hate Hillary Clinton. But I'm not going to get into them. We're going to move on. I have to get something else done today but this.
I have to eat. My husband is making me something.
Oh, you have to eat? Oh, yeah, you're lucky you have a husband who makes you things.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it is nice, actually. I'm actually really looking forward to it.
I sent my husband out the door this morning with a nice packed lunch, and I still haven't had anything to eat yet today, so I should probably, I don't know, see if there's any taquitos in the freezer. But moving on.
Behave in the same way.
Yeah, and some of them even yell more.
I kind of think that we keep looking for differences in this
and
research.
You know what the difference is? If Trump ever said, "You're complaining about my yelling because I'm a man," no one would let a woman get away with that for a single fucking second. And yet we do when Hillary does it. Because of implicit biases. We are inclined to see women as victims. We are inclined to see women in terms of how they are acted upon. So when Hillary does that shit, we just give her a pass. Ugh.
Yeah.
All right, what's this shit going on now?
In this research because we kind of want it to be true.
We're the only reason. Okay, let's just Give me 1 second.
War.
I kind of think that we keep looking for differences in this research because we kind of want it to be true.
No. Not because we kind of want it to be true, but because the differences exist. And so when we stumble across researchers like Daphne Choll, whose work I'm sure now you are working from, reach absolutely bizarre fucking conclusions from their research, right? That because very, very few brains are 100% male or 100% female in structure, that there is no male or female, there's no difference between a male brain and a female brain, in aggregate across large populations. We're gonna call bullshit. And here's the thing, right? Is that the feminist idea of gender roles is a prescriptive idea. It is essentially, we need to change society in certain ways in order to prescribe a certain way of thinking on people, right? Whereas the people who are searching for sex differences are doing so for the purposes of description, right? For the purposes of deciding, okay, is the gender segregation that's apparent in nursing and engineering, for instance, is this a reflection of inherent differences, in which case there is no injustice that needs to be fixed or corrected or accounted for? Or is it because of some injustice that needs to be removed, right? Like that's why, right? It's for the explanatory power, right? If we can explain that certain differences in aggregate, on average, across large populations, not in individuals, not in a given individual, but across large populations of men and women, if those differences across those large populations can explain that more women go into nursing because they're interested in nursing, and more men go into engineering because they're interested in engineering, right? Then any solution, if we decide we want 50-50 in each of those sectors, that means that we actually have to engage in a form of coercion, right? We have to coerce people one way or the other. We have to coerce more women into engineering or coerce more men out of it.
Okay. I'd like to add something. To this accusation that we, as people who are trying to figure out whether or not applying an equity model would make sense, or if it involves coercion, and we are looking for differences because we just want to find differences. Now, first of all, feminism asserts that women are victims of patriarchy, of male privilege, of rape culture, and that men are the perpetrators of these crimes, basically, or these maladies. Now, these two feminists have charged people like me and Karen with wanting to find differences. Because if we do find differences, it will explain certain facets, like why more men go into microchip design versus interior design. Now, and we can say that this isn't due to the forces of this malevolent patriarchy that makes women victims. It's actually due to personal choices that are related to differences in brain structure. Therefore, men aren't to blame. Now, what's interesting when they say that we are looking for differences, like we are compelled to look for differences, what's really interesting about that is there are other places where people like me and Karen look at the behaviors of men and women, and we find that they are very, very similar. Very similar. And those areas are domestic violence and sexual violence. There's significant studies now that suggest that both men and women engage in domestic violence and sexual violence at roughly the same rate towards each other. This is a similarity that we talk about And we have noticed, and we advance, a similarity in behavior between men and women. And yet, feminists like Laci Green and the other individual on her couch, they deny that, and they seek out differences in behavior in those two categories between men and women. Or they assert differences. Now, why is that? If you want to see similarities, if you're saying that behavior, differences in behavior between men and women are a result of culture, and you want to see all of the similarities, why aren't you recognizing parity in domestic violence? Why aren't you recognizing parity in sexual violence? Why aren't you recognizing that that men and women are far closer in behavior in those two areas than ever previously suspected? Why not? Why do you reject the similarities in those areas while rejecting our supposed emphasis, our unnatural or unwarranted emphasis on differences in other areas? Hey, why are you doing that if you're so focused? Focused on similarities, why are you rejecting those differences? Why are you rejecting those similarities?
Because domestic violence and sexual violence are ways that they can portray men as uniquely monstrous.
Which once again goes back to why are feminist gender roles apparently based on their own schema of where they will not accept the idea that there are similarities. So feminists will not accept the idea that men may have differences in their brain that makes them want to be CEOs or in STEM or other things that they think have high status. They won't accept those kind of differences, but they will accept differences like men are more likely to be violent, more likely to engage in domestic violence or sexual abuse of women than the reverse. So they have their own little schema of differences that they reject and similarities that they reject. And they have a series of gender roles based on that schema of differences and similarities. Why? Give me the argument that your gender schema based on rejecting certain similarities is somehow better than the one that we've just created grassroots.
Well, like I said, their schema allows them to see men as inhuman monsters, and so that's why they like it. Okay, I'm gonna move on because I gotta move on. I'm running out of steam, and I can't stand Laci Green. I just hate her.
Instead, we keep trapping ourselves in these gender identities that we've created, and they're continually reinforced by our implicit bias.
This is really interesting.
Your implicit bias to see women as victims and men as villains. The day that Laci Green says, yeah, you're right, there is a huge evidence. There's huge evidence that men and women are more similar in behavior. There's a huge amount of evidence in terms of domestic violence and sexual violence. Huge amount of evidence of similarity between men and women. The moment that Laci Green embraces those similarities, then she can say that she's actually challenging anything.
Yeah.
Fucking tards.
Okay, now that we're just going to get to the thank yous.
Oh, Vanessa, I really appreciate it. And for everyone else out there, you should definitely check out Vanessa's show, Braincraft, which you can find right here. And we'll see you next time.
Oh my God, this is PBS? Public.
No, well, she works at PBS. Vanessa works at PBS.
How is this fucking. How?
And Laci works at MTV.
How? What the fuck is wrong with this world?
Everything else.
What's wrong with it? And this is what's fucking amazing about dealing with this shit. Those two, they are fucking mouthpieces for a particular brand of gender construct, wherein women are basically victims and men are basically villains. That's their fucking gender roles. They're a mouthpiece for that, and for some reason, media loves that shit. The government seems to love that shit, maybe even less than media, but academia seems to love that shit. Every single thing you could possibly call an institution in our society loves the idea that women are victims and men are villains. Loves it! Every single fucking thing. The only fucking people who don't CBS, screaming into the fucking void. They love that shit. And then they turn around and say that they don't represent institutional whatever the fuck ever.
Yeah.
Unfucking believe. You know what? I've got.
It's okay.
I
It's
know
okay.
it's okay.
If my son was here, my 13-year-old, he would say, there, Allison. There.
No, I don't need to be soothed. I just need to fucking.
He'd gently pat you.
Maybe gently patting me would help.
He would gently pat your shoulder, and he would say, there, Allison. There.
Actually, you know what's going to help? That's what my husband would do. He would just like rub my shoulder and be like, he wouldn't say anything. He'd just do that. Okay. Let's take some letters before we go. Just very quickly. It's not too long.
Okay.
Cassie writes, and this is
just don't read the one letter that I sent you just today. Okay.
Okay. I will keep that secret. All right.
All right.
So these are in response to my request for patrons to tell me what motivated them to become a patron. So Cassie writes, "Hi Badgers. Here's why I'm a patron. I believe in supporting work that I want to see more of in the world, like comics, movies, and plays. I only spend my money on those artistic works which I think the world needs to know. Your message is in the same category. The world needs to hear it. While I don't agree with everything I've heard on Honey Badger Radio, I love the passion with which it's said and the good hearts from which it comes. Your perspectives and your research citations are almost completely unheard of elsewhere in what most people know as the mainstream media. Even ideas that are counted as a social justice warrior feminist nonsense don't give the reasons you give. I appreciate you have made my worldview a little wider and that you are working to bring awareness to serious injustices in our world. Plus, you gals and gents make me laugh on almost every podcast. Thanks for the work you do. I'm so glad to help." Well, thank you, Cassie, for being our patron. I wanted to say something about agreeing with us. I think that would probably be physically impossible since we don't agree with each other.
Yeah, no, we generally have a little bit of disagreement between us, and so I would never expect anybody to agree with everything that they hear on a Honey Badger podcast.
No, it would be impossible. You would literally and to be honest, I don't know if Karen would agree with this. I mean, even if there was a feminist out there who was willing to engage rationally with their beliefs, and even willing to actually volunteer time to promote the platform and willing to do so without causing fucking drama, they would be welcome to be part of the team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we would totally take on a Christina Hoff Summers clone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They just have to be willing to volunteer like the rest of us and also not do so without any fucking drama. But yeah, they could come and take part. And they'd have to be willing to have their beliefs discussed rationally without throwing around loaded terms and emotional bullshit. But other than that, sure. Okay, next letter. Greg writes, "While I have listened to Karen for about 2 years and other men's rights movement and anti-feminists, I have not been able to give to them due to health issues that involve a heart attack at a young age. Only 32. Money has been very hard. However, I remembered that I was giving money to Jim Sterling. While I do not agree with everything he says or does, he does point out a lot of issues in video games, as long as they don't involve gender issues. Games are of importance to me as they are my main outlet. They are not only important as the stuff you do, but they are not as important as the stuff you do for me and other men. You now have all the money I was giving to him, plus up to $4 more a month, because you do 5 times more for me than he does. Thanks again, Greg." And I just wanted to say my heartfelt thanks to both Greg and Cassie for being our patron and taking the time to write in and tell us why, because that actually makes me feel a lot better. And if you want to join them in supporting us and supporting this message, then go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio and look forward to seeing you there. Okay, thanks.